Welcome students. After studying this chapter, you will be able to describe importance of decision making, define forms of decision making, explain techniques of decision making, discuss decision making process, explain the planning process, describe the objectives and its characteristics of planning. Decision making increasingly happens at all levels of a business. The board of directors may make the grand strategic decisions about investment and direction of future growth, and managers may make the more tactical decisions about how their own department may contribute most effectively to the overall business objectives. Managers can be trained to make better decisions. They also need a supportive environment where they would not be unfairly criticized for making wrong decisions and will receive proper support from all their colleagues and superiors. According to studies, a lot of people are poorer in coming up with decisions than they think. Regardless of the effort that is put into making a decision, it has to be accepted that some decisions will not be the best possible choice. Meaning and importance. Decision making means to select a course of action from two or more alternatives. It is done to achieve a specific objective or to solve a specific problem. Decision making involves the selection of a course of action from among two or more possible alternatives in order to arrive at a solution for a given problem. Webster's 9th dictionary adds some richness to the idea of choice by introducing the idea of uncertainty. It has this to say about the word decide, the root of decision, decide, to arrive at a solution that ends uncertainty or dispute. A typical thesaurus might use words like accommodation, agreement, arrangement, choice, compromise, declaration, determination, outcome, preference, solution, resolution, result, and verdict to try and give the concept of decision some dimension. Decision making is a process of selection from a set of alternative courses of action which is thought to fulfill the objectives of the decision problem more satisfactorily than others. A decision is a process that takes place prior to the actual performance of a course of action that has been chosen. Managerial decision-making process involves establishing of goals, defining tasks, searching for alternatives, and developing plans in order to find the best answer for the decision problem. Characteristics of decision-making. It is a process of choosing a course of action from among the alternative courses of action. It is a human process involving to a great extent the application of intellectual abilities. It is the end process preceded by deliberation and reasoning. It is always related to the environment. A manager may take one decision in a particular set of circumstances and another in a different set of circumstances. It involves a time dimension and a time lag. It always has a purpose. Keeping this in view, there may just be a decision not to decide. It involves all actions like defining the problem and probing and analyzing the various alternatives which take place before a final choice is made. Forms of decision making. It is important to consider that full participation is not required in every occasion. It would be an incredible waste of time according to the type of decision. A group might prefer different systems with more or less people involved. A group might prefer different systems with more or less people involved. Irreversible. These decisions are permanent. Once taken, they cannot be undone. The effects of these decisions can be felt for a long time to come. Such decisions are taken when there is no other option. Reversible. Reversible decisions are not final and binding. In fact, they can be changed entirely at any point of time. It allows one to acknowledge mistakes, and fresh decisions can be taken depending upon the new circumstances. Delayed. Such decisions are put on hold until the decision maker thinks that the right time has come. The wait might make one miss the right opportunity that can cause some loss, especially in the case of businesses. However, such decisions give one enough time to collect all information required and to organize all the factors in the correct way. These decisions enable one to make maximum of the opportunity available at hand. However, only a good decision maker can take decisions that are instantaneous as well as correct. In order to be able to take the right decision within a short span of time, one should also take the long-term results into consideration. Experimental. One of the ways of decision making is the experimental type, in which the final decision cannot be taken until the preliminary results appear and are positive. This approach is used when one is sure of the final destination but is not convinced of the course to be taken. Trial and error. This approach involves trying out a certain course of action. If the result is positive, it is followed further. If not, then a fresh course is adopted. Such a trial and error method is continued until the decision maker finally arrives at a course of action that convinces him of success. Conditional. Conditional decisions allow an individual to keep all his options open. He sticks to one decision as long as the circumstances remain the same. Once the competitor makes a new move, conditional decisions allow a person to take up a different course of action. Styles of making decisions for leaders. Authoritative. In authoritative type, the leader is the sole decision maker, which subordinates follow. The leader has all the information and expertise required to make a quick decision. It is important that the leader is a good decision maker, as it is he who has to own up to the consequences of his decision. Facilitative. In facilitative type of decision making, both the leader and his subordinates work together to arrive at a decision. The subordinates should have the expertise as well as the access to the information required to make decisions. It is also a great way of involving and encouraging subordinates in the working of the organization. Consultative. Consultative decisions are made in consultation with the subordinates. However, the fact remains that unlike in the facilitative decision-making style, in consultative decision-making, it is the leader who holds the decision-making power. Delegate. As per the term, the leader passes on the responsibility of making decisions to one or more of his subordinates. This type is usually adopted by the leader when he is confident of the capabilities of his subordinates. Techniques of decision making. Decision trees. A decision tree shows a complete picture of a potential decision and allows a manager to graph alternative decision paths. Decision trees are a useful way to analyze hiring, marketing, investments, equipment, purchases, pricing, and similar decisions that involve a progression of smaller decisions. Generally, decision trees are used to evaluate decisions under conditions of risk. The term decision tree comes from the graphic appearance of the technique that starts with the initial decision shown as the base. Decision trees force a manager to be explicit in analyzing conditions associated with future decisions and in determining the outcome of different alternatives. The decision tree is a flexible method. It can be used for many situations in which emphasis can be placed on sequential decisions, the probability of various conditions, or the highlighting of alternatives. Payback analysis. Payback analysis comes in handy if a manager needs to decide whether to purchase a piece of equipment. Many individuals use payback analysis when they decide whether they should continue their education. They determine how much courses will cost, how much salary will they earn as a result of each course completed and perhaps degree earned, and how long it will take to recoup the investment. If the benefits outweigh the costs, the payback is worthwhile. Simulations. Simulation is a broad term indicating any type of activity that attempts to imitate an existing system or situation in a simplified manner. Simulation is basically model building, in which the simulator is trying to gain understanding by replicating something and then manipulating it by adjusting the variables used to build the model. Simulations have great potential in decision making. Decision making process. Decision making is one of the defining characteristics of leadership. It is core to the job description. Decision making is a mental process wherein individuals evaluate the options available to them and choose the one that best suits their needs. Decision making is a distinctly human activity. It is what that great big frontal lobe is for. We all make decisions all the time. Declare the decision. Decide what the decision is, how we will work it, and who should be involved. Work the decision. Generate a complete set of alternatives. Gather the information we need to understand the possibilities and probabilities, and ultimately make a choice that best fits our values. Like other good decision makers, these people consistently make high quality decisions. Good and great decision makers expect high quality outcomes, and they are generally not disappointed. Planning process. Goal setting. Plans are the means to achieve certain ends or objectives. Setting objectives is the most crucial part of planning. The organizational objectives should be set in key areas of operations. Objectives constitute the mission of an organization. They set the pattern of future course of action. The objectives must be clear, specific, and informative. Major objectives should be broken into departmental, sectional, and individual objectives. Developing the planning premises. Before plans are prepared, and assumptions and conditions underlying them must be clearly defined. These assumptions are called planning premises, and they can be identified through accurate forecasting of likely future events. They are vital to the success of planning as they supply pertinent facts about future. Reviewing limitations. In practice, several constraints or limitations affect the ability of an organization to achieve its objectives. These limitations restrict the smooth operation of plans, and they must be anticipated and provided for. The key areas of limitations are finance, human resources, materials, power, and machinery. The strong and weak points of the enterprise should be correctly assessed. Deciding the planning period. Once the broad goals, planning premises, and limitations are laid down, the next step is to decide the period of planning. The planning period should be long enough to permit the fulfillment of the commitments involved in a decision. The planning period depends on several factors. Example, future that can be reasonably anticipated, time required to receive capital investments, expected future availability of raw materials, lead time in development and commercialization of a new product, etc. Formulation of policies and strategies. The responsibility for laying down policies and strategies lies usually with management, but the subordinates should be consulted as they are to implement the policies and strategies. Alternative plans of action should be developed and evaluated carefully so as to select the most appropriate policy for the organization. Available alternatives should be evaluated in the light of objectives and planning premises. If the evaluation shows that more than one alternative is equally good, The various alternatives may be combined in action. Preparing operating plans. After the formulation of overall operating plans, the derivative or supporting plans are prepared. Several medium-range and short-range plans are required to implement policies and strategies. These plans consist of procedures, programmers, schedules, budgets, and rules. Such plans are required for the implementation of basic plans. Operational plans reflect commitments as to methods, time, money, etc. These plans are helpful in the implementation of long-range plans. Integration of plans. Different plans must be properly balanced so that they support one another. Review and revision may be necessary before the plan is put into operation. Moreover, the various plans must be communicated and explained to those responsible for putting them into practice. The participation and cooperation of subordinates is necessary for successful implementation of plans. Established plans should be reviewed periodically so as to modify and change them whenever necessary. A system of continuous evaluation and appraisal of plans should be devised to identify any shortcomings or pitfalls of the plans under changing situations. Objectives and characteristics of planning. Characteristics of planning. Planning is goal-oriented. Planning is made to achieve desired objective of business. The goals established should have general acceptance. Otherwise, individual efforts and energies will go misguided and misdirected. Planning identifies the action that would lead to desired goals quickly and economically. Planning is looking ahead. Planning is done for future. It requires peeping in future, analyzing it and predicting it. A plan is a synthesis of forecast. Planning is an intellectual process. Planning is a mental exercise involving creative thinking, sound judgment, and imagination. It is not a mere guesswork, but a rotational thinking. Planning is always based on goals, facts, and considered estimates. Planning involves choice and decision making. Planning essentially involves choice among various alternatives. A manager is surrounded by a number of alternatives. He has to pick the best depending upon requirements and resources of the enterprises. Planning is the primary function of management, primacy of planning. Planning lays foundation for other functions of management. It serves as a guide for organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. All the functions of management are performed within the framework of plans laid out. Planning is a continuous process. Planning is a never-ending function due to the dynamic business environment. Plans are also prepared for a specific period of time, and at the end of that period, plans are subjected to re-evaluation and review in the light of new requirements and changing conditions. Planning is all-pervasive. It is required at all levels of management and in all departments of enterprise. The top level may be more concerned about planning the organization as a whole, whereas the middle level may be more specific in departmental plans and the lower level plans implementation of the same. Planning is designed for efficiency. Planning leads to accomplishment of objectives at the minimum possible cost. A plan is worthless or useless if it does not value the cost incurred on it. Planning leads to proper utilization of men, money, materials, methods, and machines. Planning is flexible. Planning is done for the future. Since future is unpredictable, planning must provide enough room to cope with the changes in customers' demand, competition, and government policies, etc. Under changed circumstances, the original plan of action must be revised and updated to make it more practical. Objectives of planning. Fundamental to the management of any successful program is an understanding of an agreement on program goals and objectives. Appraising risk. Identifying land at risk and the degree of risk of flooding from river, sea and other sources in their areas. Preparing regional flood risk appraisals, RFRAs, or strategic flood risk assessments, SFRAs, as appropriate as freestanding assessment that contribute to the sustainability appraisal of their plans. Managing risk. Framing policies for the location of development which avoid flood risk to people and property where possible and manage any residual risk taking account of the impact of climate change. Reducing risk. Safeguarding land from development that is required for current and future flood management. Example, conveyance and storage of flood water and flood defences. Reducing flood risk to and from new development through location, layout and design, incorporating sustainable drainage systems. Summary. Decision making is the process of identifying and selecting a course of action to solve a specific problem. A number of characteristics have been exhibited by decision makers, and those decisions can be timed right or off-centered. The entire decision-making process is dependent upon the right information being available to the right people at the right times. When deciding on the most suitable decision-making method, it is important to consider that full participation is not required in every occasion. Making decisions in our daily lives and in the workplace can be one of the most overlooked processes. A rational decision-making model provides a structured and sequenced approach to decision-making. Planning refers to the process of deciding what to do and how to do it.